Almost a week since Eskom implemented load shedding last Sunday, the parastatal has since told Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises that no more blackouts are to be expected in the foreseeable future. But energy expert Ted Blom is warning that the power utility lied about how long it will take to sort out issues surrounding the coal cliff. To join the dots on that, he joins me in studio now. Ted, thank you very much for giving us some of your Saturday. Why is Eskom lying to us?
The primary reason why I think they're lying is that they don't have any new coal mines. They're supposed to have opened up more than 20 coal mines beginning in 2007. In 10 years, they haven't opened up a single coal mine. And what they're currently doing is they're scavenging, the small players for bits of coal here and there. But until such time as when Eskom actually invests in new coal mines, plus 5 years, because it'll take 5 years to develop those coal mines, only then will there be prospects of them sorting out the coal shortage. Until then, it's no-go.
Now, explain to us in the most simplest terms possible, what does the coal cliff refer to? Is that essentially how many days coal South Africa's power utility has on hand to keep the lights on?
Not quite. The coal cliff was Cape Town's day zero. And that is when there was no more coal available freely on the market for Eskom, without Eskom having taken some steps to ameliorate the situation. So the coal cliff date was about 2015. That was estimated in 27. We didn't anticipate that the economy would have slowed down so much. That's why it's taken longer than 2015 to actually appear. But from here on forward, it's just dark.
How much has this got to do with cleansing Eskom's supply chain and supply chain management when it comes to coal, after fairly dubious contracts that it did have for the provision of coals from some Gupta-linked companies like Tegeta?
Okay, so I'm on record. In Parliament, I said that the 2008 blackouts were self-inflicted by Eskom to boost corruption. The 2014-2015 blackouts were again self-inflicted by Eskom, together with the Guptas, as you just mentioned, to boost corruption. And the 2018, where we sit at the moment, it's again self-inflicted, and this time I think it's through sheer incompetence.
When you say self-inflicted to promote corruption, are you essentially creating an emergency situation whereby supply chain management and financial controls can be flouted?
Absolutely. When Eskom declares a coal emergency, the normal procurement rules don't apply, no tenders, contracts on the back of cigarette boxes in tremendous premiums, and premiums that are not openly disclosed to the public, and a total mismatch in terms of supply and demand in the marketplace.
But you're talking about the 2018 blackouts having to do with incompetence more than corruption.
Absolutely. I'd like to believe, and I'd like to give the current board the benefit of the doubt, that they may be not allowing as much corruption to take place as previously. The fact of the matter is they've been there for more than 10 months and they still haven't even got off the ground to start a new coal mine. And they need at least 20 of these, as I said.
So, of course, this undermines attempts at a new dawn. Cyril Ramaphosa, one of his first moves as ANC president was to ensure that there was a new Eskom board. How would you rate that board out of 10 in the 10 months that they've been in charge?
With respect, I've got to give them a 0.
0?
Absolutely. They've done nothing that a normal person would not have been able to do, except that they've played catch-up. None of the board, other than one person, had any energy sector experience. And I went to their presentation last week where they sort of gave the state of the nation for Eskom, and it was a joke.
So where do we stand moving forward? I mean, well, what were the alternatives? We needed a new Eskom board. I mean, that was apparent for all to see. But where do we go to from here? If you are saying that we have a board that's out of its depth and have essentially not stood up to the task.
Well, and the evidence is there. I mean, when they were appointed in January, they said, give us 9 months and we'll put a turnaround plan on the table. It's now been 10 months. They've asked for more extensions, and now we hear it's only going to happen sometime next year. Heavens knows when. And the fact of the matter is they don't have the competence to develop their own turnaround plan. So from here on forward, next 5 years at least, we'll be stumbling around in the dark with frequent load shedding and similar incidents.
What is it going to take to fix Eskom? I mean, the promises have always been that load shedding, blackouts are not going to be a fixture in South African life, but for more than a decade now, load shedding remains in the South African lexicon.
And we'll see load shedding like we've never seen before in the next 5 years. That I can guarantee you.
Even with other power stations like Medupi and Kusile coming on gradually?
Absolutely, that's not going to change the situation. The ambit on those stations might be more curtailed, but the other stations are completely dire. I worked out that...
dire from a point of view with them having reached the end of their life and capacity, or also due to perhaps maintenance and the like not being forthcoming or not being to the desired standard?
Okay, so you've raised a couple of issues there. Firstly, they've come to the end of the coal mine's life, and coal doesn't regrow. It's finished. It's depleted, so you need to find new sources of coal. Energy, Eskom merely converts coal into electrical energy, so there's nothing magic about that. So there's no coal, there's no energy. The second thing that you touched on now, and that is what's come out in Parliament this week, is that Eskom has only been doing around 50% of its maintenance for the last 4 years. They've been telling us they were on a catch-up because between 2010, after the World Cup, and 2014, they did zero maintenance, or close to zero maintenance.
Why?
The strategy at that stage was lights on at all costs. So they're not going to take anything down to do maintenance. They wanted to boost maximum power because they thought that we were at the cusp of a new economic boom. That boom filled it out by 2013, as we all saw now. And whilst that was anticipated, and Medupi was supposed to come on to provide relief, and it was late, they said they're not going to take the other stations down to do maintenance. So the whole system is creaking under lack of maintenance, and it will go dark because there's no coal.
Okay, so before I venture into the discussion on the Independent Power Producers Program that has been much touted as the panacea to our power problems, what is the short-term outlook and also the medium-term outlook? What's happening in the next year and what can we expect over the next 5 years?
Okay, so Eskom at best, with the help of these new stations and Koeberg down in the Cape, can at best probably generate around 11 gigawatts of power on a daily basis without too much interruption. And that's roughly about a third of what South Africa needs. So that's why they've now introduced phase 8 or level 8 load shedding, which is up to 17 hours a day and intermittent. So it will make life very, very difficult because you can't have equipment on for an hour or two and then off, and workers working for an hour or two and then off. I mean, it's just totally disruptive. Eskom needs to rethink those load shedding schedules as well, because obviously they're not living in the real world.
What are we to make of the Independent Power Producer Program? There was a severe pushback from civil society, from within the ANC itself, never mind opposition parties and also various other civil bodies against the nuclear deal. The nuclear deal seems all but dead at this point in time. And now, with great fanfare, we have an Independent Power Producer Program that has been launched with great fanfare and driven by Energy Minister Jeff Gedebe. Doesn't anybody also realize that the IPP program is a little bit more expensive than nuclear?
Okay, so my take on the IPP program as it's currently implemented, it's just corruption under another label. At the cost of IPPs, nuclear would have been cheap. There are big problems with the IPPs. They are not reliable. You can't run a mine business or smelting business based on renewables because you have to take responsibility for availability of power when there's an emergency or when the shift ends. And under the IPP program, there's no reliability of availability of power. So in industrial terms, these are toys.
In the age of global warming and the environmental challenges that the world is experiencing, is it not a more responsible strategy looking forward to the future to try and embrace renewables at this stage, though?
I think the current renewable wave is a gravy train. I think there are far more reliable and cost-effective technologies available currently, and I would include nuclear, but a responsible nuclear, not Mr. Zuma's nuclear. And I costed that in 2013. It should have come in at no more than a nuclear program that they were talking about should have cost no more than 250 billion, which compared to Medupi would have been chicken feed, and Kusile and Ingula, which have grossly overexpended. So nuclear would certainly be a far better option as far as I can see, far more reliable. It's industrial power, it's strong, it's always available. And then there's new technologies. So within 2025, there's new fission technologies which will revolutionize the energy arena. That together with smart grids where most people are going to go off the grid.
Are you essentially painting a picture where South Africa is damned if we do and damned if we didn't when it came to nuclear? We've now embraced IPP and essentially it's what you're suggesting as a Trojan horse.
Absolutely, and we will rue the day we signed those IPP contracts. And let me quickly explain why. Firstly, they are 20-year contracts. They are indexed to inflation, so they increase by inflation plus every single year. They're on a take-or-pay basis, so whether we need the power, whether we don't need the power, that's the one correct statement Mr. Molefe made when he said that whether you have customers or not, you're forced to take the IPP power. So, and then lastly, I mean, every kilowatt-hour sale to the IPP is a kilowatt-hour sale less for Eskom. Eskom is the company that's drawing this economy into the fire. And we are, by promoting the IPPs, we're merely killing off Eskom sooner.
Last but not least, what's your message to the South African consumer, the South African family that are at home reliant on electricity? Get a generator?
Well, I think there's more than that, but they need to brace themselves because this is going to be a hell of a ride going forward for the next 5 years at least.
Well, we'll have to leave it at that. Energy expert Ted Blom joining us in studio here to chat about Eskom.